Hey, it's State of State. We got your Nittany Line update. It's a football discussion with Tom and Justin, so kick back and press play.
With former Penn State and NFL defensive back Justin King, I'm Tom Hannafin. This is State of State. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with constant real-time odds in action and the ability to watch the games as they happen, with the largest selection of odds on everything from football to the NBA, college basketball, the NHL, and even UFC. Head to betonline.ag today and don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. State of State is presented by BetOnline. The game starts here. Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Hannafin. Welcome to State of State. I'm flying solo today. I want to break down everything that we've learned in this past week in regard to Penn State's offensive coordinator, Andy Kotelnicki, announcing that he is committed to Penn State football for the 2024 college football playoff run. The Nittany Lions will get underway on December 21st at noon Eastern on TNT, hosting SMU, the 6th seed against the 11th seed. Cannot wait to see that game. But Andy Kotelnicki making it clear that he's committed to the Penn State Nittany Lions into 2025. I want to talk about everything that this means for the Penn State football program and also this roller coaster, I guess you could call it, of Andy Kotelnicki flirting with the West Virginia head coaching job. Could it have worked? Why didn't it work out? And how significant this is for Penn State football. Before we get into all of that, I want to ask you a question. Have you ever tried to explain football to a little kid? It's near impossible to make it make sense. I've tried to explain football to grown adults who know absolutely nothing about the sport. Imagine trying to explain what first down is to a person who's never heard of football. How do you possibly explain first down, second down, third down, fourth down? Well, imagine trying to explain football to a little kid. I want to tell you about Future Fans Sports. It's a new brand that helps little kids become big fans by embedding the rules of football into parallel games and activities. The way that Future Fans teaches is in these storybook-led activities, and it's absolutely genius. Here's an example. Instead of trying to explain downs in football, like I just mentioned, they have a kid play a beanbag toss game with things like 4 tries and 6 points embedded into it. And then later, the kids connect those concepts back to football through the storybook that guides the entire Future Fans experience. Seriously, check out the reviews on this thing. Future Fans is a 4.9 on Amazon. Now, Future Fans was invented by dads who have this thing figured out for the rest of us. And to all the dads and parents that are watching and listening to this show, this is a godsend. Imagine your kid asking to watch on Saturdays and Sundays with you or being right there alongside of you for all the ups and downs with your favorite team. That's what dreams are made of. Those are some wonderful childhood memories. And Future Fans exists to make them a reality. And it's only $49.99 at futurefans.com. But if you use the code Penn State, PENNSTATE, you'll get 15% off. That's futurefans.com, code Penn State, and unlock a lifetime of memories around sports this holiday season. All right, let's talk about Andy Kotelnicki. This is a huge piece of news altogether for the Penn State football team. It was announced by Kotelnicki earlier on this week on X. Kotelnicki saying, quote, "Beyond lucky to be a part of the Penn State football family, still a lot to accomplish this season, and I'm looking forward to what 2025 has in store for our program. Hashtag we are." By the way, all of us extremely grateful to see the hashtag we are restored to its actual glory. I don't know what that logo was next to it for the longest time. It was extremely annoying. Anyway, Andy Kotelnicki returning to the Penn State football program. It was a number of weeks ago that it was reported by Mike Asti, the managing editor at WV Sports Now and Pittsburgh Sports Now, that Andy Kotelnicki was interviewing for the West Virginia head coaching job. And then shortly thereafter, it was reported that Andy Kotelnicki was a finalist for the West Virginia head coaching job. And then it was also reported after that, that, quote, the West Virginia job was there for Andy Kotelnicki if he wanted it. Then you started to hear some stories out there of, well, West Virginia could be looking at former West Virginia head coach Rich Rodriguez, who had a lot of success with the Mountaineers many, many years ago, and is currently at Jacksonville State. He's doing some very good things with the Gamecocks. So there was the rumor about Rich Rodriguez. Then there was the rumor about Anthony Becht, who has been coaching for the St. Louis Battlehawks recently in the UFL and has had a great amount of success. So credit to Mike Asti, who's done a great job reporting this entire story through the way. But then all the news started to come out in the last few weeks in regard to Kotelnicki maybe zeroing in on this, and Penn State fans being a little bit worried of, okay, well, this is in the lead up to the Big Ten championship game. Kotelnicki is interviewing, and then it's the college football playoff build. We know Penn State versus SMU is on the horizon. The transfer portal opening up, like, it's not a great time, obviously, for something like this to be going down with your offensive coordinator, but it's kind of how college football works at this point. Asti would say that the West Virginia job was Kotelnicki's if he wants it. And then Asti would also add on X, going to add that I heard Kotelnicki did not love the thought of having to leave Penn State before the college football playoff. I also heard from another source, this is the words of Mike Asti, completely when asking about this, that WVU thought this was Kotelnicki playing hardball. So there was some discussion on social media of whether or not there was a possibility that Kotelnicki was stalling potentially to try and get more money. But there was also a great deal of conversation, understanding that Kotelnicki wanted to come to Penn State in the first place when he did get this job, that this was something very important to him and his family to be a part of the Penn State football program and to be in State College. There were other reports coming out that said, quote, Penn State offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki has lost substantial momentum, and it's unlikely that he'll be West Virginia's next head coach. How quickly things change. This is according to Paul Mountaineer and a variety of different sources. This seems to have pivoted quickly in the last few days, especially within the last week, and the timing is very interesting. I think the way that the Penn State offense performed against Oregon in the Big Ten championship spoke volumes, obviously, to the performance of the players on the field. But Andy Kotelnicki, I talked about how I was surprised that they came out pass happy for the first quarter and a half in that game. But man, once this team committed to the running game, to hang 37 points on the best team in America, in my opinion, the Oregon Ducks, and on top of that, to record 8.6 yards per carry, nearly 300 yards rushing, over 500 yards of total offense in that game, and you only lose by a possession, again, to the number one undefeated Ducks. It was a hell of a performance, so it does make you speculate, is this a situation where James Franklin and company maybe made him an offer he couldn't refuse? If that's what happened, fantastic. That's something that James Franklin has been lobbying for with a variety of his different contracts, is try and get more money for his coordinators, for his assistants over the years, so he can attempt to retain these types of people, this type of staff. And it's the immense challenge that, and Justin King and I talk about all the time, that when your team does have success, inevitably your players, your personnel, your staff get poached, especially in this transfer portal era. So I don't think this was a situation that, from the get-go, I didn't feel like this was a situation where Andy Kotelnicki was going to leave after one season at Penn State. And that's no slight specifically against the West Virginia job. That's one of the better jobs in college football. Just because it's in the Big 12, it really didn't mean all that much to me in terms of what conference it was going to be in. I thought Kotelnicki was going to command a high-profile program to potentially jump to, having been an offensive coordinator in now the Big Ten, and before that at Kansas and Big 12. So it made sense, and it wasn't a bad job to take. I'll put it that way. But the timing just makes sense for Kotelnicki to want to sit tight. So what are the overall ramifications for this? One, this is extremely helpful to James Franklin and his staff right now, recruiting in the transfer portal. And remember, you're re-recruiting your own roster, which just got done with National Signing Day. So the class of 2025 is locked up. So that gives a lot of confidence to those incoming players, whether they're in the transfer portal or part of that class, they know that Andy Kotelnicki is going to be there. And it also means that having Kotelnicki come in early in 2024 to join this staff and was present there, or actually in the back end of 2023, was brought in and was able to attend the Peach Bowl, but was not actively coaching at that time. So started his evaluation process. As a coordinator in that situation, you're just kind of dealing with what you've got. And slowly as the season goes by, you start to be a part of the recruiting process and your input is gathered as you're kind of getting accustomed to what your roster is going to look like, what your needs could be, and having a little bit more say and like, hey, I'd like to have this. I'd like to have this piece. So that means Andy Kotelnicki is going to have a larger voice in terms of molding this Penn State roster as we get into 2025, looking at the transfer portal and potentially recruits for 2026, not to completely jump ahead. I wouldn't be shocked if Kotelnicki looked to next year's coaching cycle to see if that high profile opportunity is out. Again, that's not to say that West Virginia isn't a high profile positive opportunity. I think that would have been great for Andy Kotelnicki, but clearly it shows his commitment to the program, and he just seems like a classic football guy in that, yes, could he have jumped and gone to West Virginia during this time? Sure, but somebody who's looking at the college football playoff and the significance of this, it's historic, a first 12-team college football playoff. And also when it came out that Penn State's first round matchup is against SMU and potentially their second round matchup is on a neutral against Boise State, Penn State is arguably the easiest path of any team to the semifinals. Now, that's not to say that Penn State has a clear path to a national championship, but still, Penn State is absolutely set up for success this year. So if Andy Kotelnicki was completely committed to just, yep, I want to be a head coach, I want to run my own shop, I want to get paid accordingly, he probably would have jumped. But this shows you his commitment, one, to the Penn State football program, to James Franklin, the opportunity that he's gotten, and also his commitment to his players that he's developed a relationship with over the past year, that he wants to see this out, that he wants to see if Penn State can make a run and possibly win a national championship for the first time in almost 40 years. So this would be incredible for Penn State. Also, I think the thing we have to process here is that there have been a lot of speculation that 2024 could be quarterback Drew Allar's last season as a Penn State Nittany Lion. I've been of the opinion since I saw the way Allar's 2023 went that I was expecting Allar to stay into 2025, play that season, and then go into the 2026 NFL draft. Now, there's a lot of draft analysts that have, spoken very highly of Allar and his mechanics, things that need work. He has grown leaps and bounds from 23 into 24. Could he go this year? It's still plausible. Could he go this year and be a more coveted asset than if he went in 26? That's also been argued as a yes. I leave that to draft analysts to look at, but I think it's very clear the maturation process of Drew Allar. You've seen how his command of the offense has gotten better. He does not make many mistakes. I know we talked about the handful of mistakes he made against Oregon. He's gotten better in big game situations. He's been more productive. I think Penn State fans had a lot of wanted to see him put up video game numbers on a regular basis, but that's not really what this offense has asked him to do. It's really not what Mike Yurcich was able to get out of him in his first year as a starter. I think Yurcich's offense was potentially built to do that, but it was almost a square peg in a round hole. With Kotelnicki staying into 2025, you further that relationship with Drew Allar. And what that says to me is the program realizing that this team, if it wants to reach the level of competing for a national championship credibly, that's always the way I like to put it, credibly competing for a national championship, Drew Allar is an enormous reason why Penn State is able to do that this year credibly. If you keep Kotelnicki and Allar together for another run in 25, just imagine where they can go with this, how much better Drew Allar's game can get. Imagine the pieces they can add. Penn State has made it clear they're committed to the personnel that they like. I've not exactly been thrilled with it. I would love to see some alphas come in at wide receiver and really help out passing attack, but the tight end room continues to just be refilled, I guess is the best way to put it. Every single year it seems to reload. There's more and more talent, and you have Tyler Warren having an epic season, by the way, getting snubbed as a potential finalist to go to New York, not one of the 4 invited to New York. I think that I disagreed with that entirely, and that there's only two real unicorns in the sport this year, and it's Travis Hunter from Colorado for obvious reasons, playing both sides of the ball, wide receiver and cornerback, and Tyler Warren, who contributes catching the football, running the football, throwing the football, blocking, like everything you can possibly imagine. What more do you have to do? I understand the inclusion of Boise's Ashton Genty. I understand Dylan Gabriel, quarterback for Oregon. It's hard to argue if there's a better quarterback in the United States right now than Dylan Gabriel. I think he's the best quarterback playing in college football and certainly playing in the college football playoff. And then Cam Ward had an outstanding season for Miami. And I would argue if you don't have someone like Cam Ward, you don't see Miami elevated in the way that they were able to come up this year. I just think Tyler Warren, we're biased, obviously, but still Tyler Warren should have been there. But I digress. Penn State able to reload at the tight end position, the personnel that they like to utilize. Clearly, James Franklin likes that Kotelnicki is seeing what his personnel is from the way that Franklin and his staff likes to recruit, and is continuing to make that work time and time again. That's been obvious this year, and that will only get better into 2025. It makes me ask the question of how much more can this mean for Nick Singleton's maturation? I think everybody's been longing to see the Nick Singleton of his freshman campaign. This year dealt with some injuries. Last year, a lot of people being like, hey, was he hurt during this season? Because he just didn't see himself. Katron Allen has continued to be extremely consistent. There are going to be other running backs that are able to contribute for this Penn State offense. The offensive line taking another step. Like, there's still a lot of young pieces on this offensive line that can really blossom in 2025. So Andy Kotelnicki is going to have a lot to work with in this next season. So it's still the situation of, okay, we just get around to doing this whole kind of dance next year, potentially with another school. Possibly. I kind of look at it as a Manny Diaz situation, and that if you have Andy Kotelnicki, someone who is as creative and progressive and adaptable, he's not going to be able to stick around long. If you're fortunate in this sport, there's not many situations where coordinators are able to hang on for 10, 20 years. That used to be the case, obviously, at Penn State. We know that went on for quite some time. It's gone on in a handful of programs in the past. But to be able to retain coordinators in this era of NIL, the transfer portal, enormous buyouts for coaches, opportunities to jump from different conferences, conference realignment, et cetera. The opportunity is too great almost. I almost look at the way Clemson was able to retain Brent Venables for as long as they did, arguably during his time, the best defensive coordinator in college football. Is there a situation where Penn State is able to throw enough money at somebody like a Andy Kotelnicki and be like, hey, we would love for you to be the guy for 10 years? I don't know the answer to that necessarily. If you can keep a guy like him for 2 years, you're pretty happy. And then it brings in the question of, okay, who's the next offensive coordinator? Let's say if Kotelnicki at the end of the 2025 season decides to leave, or again, in 2025, do you see Penn State back into the college football playoff? Is that a situation where he makes a similar decision of, I'm committed to the program, the kids, the players, and ultimately the betterment of the team and winning a championship, as opposed to chasing a job? And in all of this, we may never know the true answer to, did Penn State make him an offer or give him a raise of some kind and entice him to stay, incentivize him to stay? That's entirely possible. We may never truly get that answer. But this just creates a lot of intrigue and a lot of options. And I think there are going to be plausible offensive coordinator candidates out there, just as there are every cycle somebody gets excited about. But I think the one person that Penn State fans need to think about is Danny O'Brien, who's currently working with the quarterbacks for Penn State and has been doing that for a while, was doing it under Yursich, has known James Franklin for quite a while, former quarterback at the University of Maryland, has a great relationship with Drew Aller right now. So obviously, if Aller were to go into the 2026 NFL draft, it's like, oh, well, that relationship might not matter beyond 2025. Yes and no, the positives to that, but still being able to work with the current quarterbacks that Penn State has, whether it be Bo Prabula, Ethan Grunkemeyer, any of the quarterbacks that are coming in. Danny O'Brien has inevitably been a part of building those relationships in the recruiting cycle, in the transfer portal era, for all that. So avenue I could see Penn State potentially going, and we know how much James Franklin likes to promote from within. But this just creates a lot of options for Penn State, and I think this is an enormous win for the Penn State football program to lock up Kotelnicki into 2025. The timing couldn't be better. As I mentioned, you're in the middle of the beginning of this transfer portal window, which began on Monday, December 9th. It's going to run into December 28th. You have your first college football playoff game on the 21st at home, noon Eastern on TNT, hosting SMU. Should be a cold, frigid day out for the Mustangs, but still, this is a huge win for the Penn State football program. And now it's just a question of, what do you do from a recruiting standpoint? What do you do from a personnel standpoint? How does the NIL game for Penn State continue to improve into 2025? We've talked about it a lot on this show, is that it's a major flaw and a major gap in Penn State's football program, the ecosystem as a whole, as Justin King likes to put it. That's something that needs to improve. So being able to hold on to your offensive coordinator as another piece of that pitch, so to speak, is only going to help Penn State's case when they have these conversations with recruits, when they have these conversations with possibly major sponsors, et cetera, for Penn State to make leaps. So I'm very excited about this. Andy Kotelnicki staying with the Penn State football program into 2025, and especially having him fully committed to the team now as we're on the brink of this historic 12-team college football playoff. It's fantastic for the program. Thank you so much for joining me here on State of State. Later on this week, Justin King will be back here on State of State, and he and I are going to be talking about this first week of the transfer portal being open, Penn State football players that have entered the portal, some we've talked about, some we haven't talked about, and some of the possible targets and offers that are out there inside the transfer portal that Penn State is going to be looking at, positions of need. And also, I love to always get Justin King's opinion on, yes, there's positions of need, but are you going to make an offer at one of those positions and actually hit? Is a guy a game changer to our conversation about Kevin Concepcion, the wide receiver from North Carolina, looking to see, it's like, hey, are you just going to make an offer and maybe have, no disrespect, but a Julian Fleming situation? Can Penn State really hit at these positions? So we're going to talk transfer portal a little bit later on. Also, belated congratulations to Paul Posluszny, who officially went into the College Football Hall of Fame last night, taking his rightful place in immortality, a Penn State legend, one of the greatest defensive players in the history of college football. We've had him on this podcast platform in the past, and we want to send our congratulations to Paul. Thank you so much for joining me here on State of State. Justin King will be back later this week for more on the transfer portal and the lead up to the beginning of the college football playoff, Penn State versus SMU. Thank you all so much for joining us. This episode and our entire library of shows is available now on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please like, comment, subscribe, rate us, and turn on notifications. Follow us on social media at State of State Pod. Comment on our YouTube channel. And if you haven't done so already, you can become a member of our YouTube channel. For just 99 cents a month, you can get all upcoming episodes of State of State, plus our entire members-only playlist, ad-free, commercial-free. Hit the join button on our homepage or follow the link in the description of this podcast. State of State is presented by BetOnline and by Blue White Outfitters.